What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Afro coming back at you once again with another video, but it's kind of related to one of my previous videos, which was also about religion. This time I want to focus a little bit on Islam, and a specific aspect about that is the Islamic slave trade. I'm not doing this to bash anyone or to bash anyone's religion. I'm simply doing this to bring light information that, surprisingly, doing my own research, I found out most black people don't even know themselves. Or through other knowledge that other people have given me, I found out that black people will always want to fight you or get aggressive if you give them this information, and they always often want to deny it, just like they deny a lot of other stuff that I think we should also talk about in the black community. But just to get into it, we primarily focus on the transatlantic slave trade and the impacts it had on black people. But what about the Islamic or Arab slave trade? I call it sometimes the Arab slave trade as well, because the Arabs were a huge part of the slave trade, and Mecca was even a bustling site of trading slaves, which actually is in Arabia. And there was a time when a British consular general asked the Sultan of Morocco around the 1700s, between the 16 and the 1900s. Essentially, what he asked was, "Will you take any measures to stop slavery?" The Sultan said, "No. We will not do anything that the Quran forbids or stop anything the Quran allows." And now you can see a complete justification of allowing slavery in Islam. And Muhammad, the supposed perfect prophet, also had slaves himself. Slavery was popular back then, and it predated Islam. However, in Islam, everybody could be a slave, but it's good to note that everybody had their own advantages. There were white slaves, there were Zanj, there were Indian slaves, and I guess you could say once again, all of them had their advantages. But blacks were definitely at the bottom of the totem pole. We often see throughout history that Mamluks, or Turkish slave soldiers who are often white and indistinguishable from their European counterparts, could rise to high positions such as sultan, rulers, or just great people. And you often saw blacks being relegated to just foot soldiers, or in my personal opinion, cannon fodder, or just like tools to be used and discarded, or laborers. And if they were not in Africa in their own empires, such as Mali, Songhai, Ghana, all these wonderful empires that were Muslim, but like they were black though. And oftentimes the Sultan of Khan in Bornu had complained to the Egyptian Sultan that like the slave trade was ravaging his people, and even though they were all Muslim. So apparently, even though you're black, you could still be enslaved, you know? And there was really no thing that was protecting black people. Even today, in modern terms, abid or abd is a term that Arabs like to call black people, meaning slave, almost as if they're calling you the N-word. For example, once again, they were often seen as laborers and useful tools to be discarded when they were no longer needed. Okay? Now there was a rebellion called the Zanj Rebellion in the Abbasid Caliphate. That's how bad the treatment of blacks were when they were Muslims in modern day Iraq. That's how bad the treatment was. Okay, there was a Zanj rebellion that was very destructive to the caliphate. As a matter of fact, to go further, Ibn Khaldun, a Muslim household name which most Muslims know about, right? So Ibn Khaldun, you're talking about somebody being known, like as if black people know Martin Luther King. Ibn Khaldun is a household name, right? So he referred or equated black people to dumb animals, basically. Research it. Now, Muslim Africa committed a lot of jihad against non-Muslims, and that ravaged the continent. Okay, countless people were like raided and enslaved by other Africans and by also Arabs that were helping a lot as well in these raids. Okay, now I will say like this is where the difference kind of cuts. I'm not saying the Portuguese or other European powers didn't go on some raids in Africa, but it was definitely at a minimum because they couldn't survive the diseases that would often kill them. So you literally had Africans trading their own people. Okay, how much we don't know, but we know it happened. Now you have the Arabs that came in themselves and started to like just slave raid in general. Okay, the death toll was often something to talk about as well, because the transatlantic slave trade killed anywhere between 10 to 15 million, and the Arab slave trade killed anywhere between 20 and 120 million. The reason why we have the estimate of that largest number is only because the slave trade started before and lasted way longer than the transatlantic slave trade. So as many as 120 million people could have been taken, but the rough estimate is 20 million. Okay, now once again, transatlantic slave trade lasted for 400 years. Arab slave trade or Islamic slave trade lasted for 1200 years and is still ongoing in some places. There are even apps where black people or people in general can be bought as slaves. Okay, they make it come off as like you're just a housemaid, but you don't get paid, you get treated like crap, and you can even be prone to being raped. Okay, just like what essentially what was being done years ago by other Muslims. Now the Zanj or black slaves were often eunuchs, meaning they were castrated. Okay, the Arabs apparently thought that a lot of sexually active men would be dangerous for like their women, so they were often castrated to be eunuchs. Nubia, the land below Egypt, was able to stave off the Arab invasion for a while, or the Muslim invasion for a while, because they were able to make an agreement after a war, the Bakht Agreement, which said that which lasted for 600 years and essentially said they had to provide 360 slaves to the Muslims every year, which is the reason why Nubia wasn't overtaken for a while. Okay, now, and it's good to note that they were literally only place. It wasn't a decisive defeat, but it was really the only place that Muslims were generally stopped from their expansion. Okay, Muammar Gaddafi, the dictator that was basically killed by the U.S., even admitted himself sorry on behalf of all Arabs that we participated in the slave trade of Africans. Okay, if that's not proof for you, I don't know what is. Okay, it was so basically three things. The Arab slave trade was started 700 years before the transatlantic slave trade, lasted after the transatlantic slave trade, and is still going on. It was no less dehumanizing, and it also, once again, lasted longer. Freeing slaves was not an obligation that Muslims had to do, although like it's something that like would help you with atonement, or is something that's looked upon as being good, but is not obligated. Muhammad himself had slaves, and also female slaves were the ones that are primarily prized. Whereas in transatlantic slave trade, the numbers were flipped. There was more males than females because they wanted people to do the work. That's why they were allowed to have families. You don't really see the descendants of like the blacks in the Middle East though, because once again they were castrated. But you see their descendants in the Americas and in England. Most slaves died on the route going to where they had to go because they were castrated and couldn't make the trip. And unfortunately, once again, it had higher death tolls, castration, sex slavery, and children were wanted, and non-Muslims were primarily targeted. Once again, this is not to like attack anybody, but I just want black people to know their history and their information, not just like taking like the sugar-coated version of anything. Let's just tell how it is. Okay, so I just wanted black people to just know that, to get that information out there for them. Tell me what you guys thought about this video. Please like and leave a comment below, subscribe, hit the bell icon for more videos. On top of that, please subscribe to my Patreon and follow me on social media as well, because your help will be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys, and have a great day.